Okay, so today we are talking about my favorite settings of the year. We just did favorite characters in the last video. This video is going to be talking about some settings that I've encountered in the first 6 months of the year that I think are great. So for me, a big part of loving the place where a book is set is to do with extremely immersive writing. If the author is able to really make me feel and smell and touch the environment around me without being exhaustive and without being flowery, it really gets me. I guess everything is subjective in reading, but I feel like settings and what makes a setting come alive to you is probably even more subjective. So take it with a grain of salt, but these are some settings that I have really sunk into. And I'm going to start by talking about Daphne du Maurier. I think that du Maurier has one of the most atmospheric writing styles I've ever read, but particularly Jamaica and even more so Frenchman's Creek. These are two books by her this year that I have just sunk into. I've absolutely, I felt like I was there. I could feel and taste and touch everything happening around me. And in this one, it's a very uncomfortable setting. It's very spooky and not spooky, maybe that's the wrong word, but the place where, I think her name was Mary, our main character, goes, it's very nefarious. It is a dirty town full of dirty people. And Mary, our naive, doe-eyed protagonist, goes in not prepared with, she's not equipped with the right cynicism of the world to be able to handle this type of town. So this very uncomfortable setting, I was so physically uncomfortable with her. These very not cool people, I felt it. And then everything that she went through, every new location she explored when she would go into different people's houses or go, she was around the town. I was there with her. And same with Frenchman's Creek. Especially, so this is a woman who goes away to one of her manors and meets some pirates, falls in love with pirating. That's a pretty bad description of it. But especially the scenes where she was on the boat, where she was learning the ropes, I was there. I felt the sea breeze brushing through my hair. I could smell the ocean water. I was getting sores on my hands trying to maneuver the sails and the ropes. I was there. And books that can put me in the story to the level that du Maurier can, it's something that I don't experience very often. And when I do, the story just, it sticks with me and I enjoy being in it so much. So many stories, I feel like when we're getting close to the end, I'm ready for the end, no matter how much I enjoy the story. Even if I love the story, I'm always ready for the end because I'm excited for the next story. But with du Maurier in particular, I almost never feel that way. I almost always feel sad when I finish one of her books because I just want to keep living there. I've been living there and I don't want to leave. And I really think the thing that makes me not ready for the next one, the thing that gives me a book hangover more than anything else, is immersive settings, and her stories do that for me. Next on the list, since I just said that, I'll just follow this straight up with the Ember Blade. I can't hold it up because I lent it to a friend, so Corey, do the image. The Ember Blade is, so this one didn't make it onto my favorite characters list because even though I really loved the characters in this book, they definitely weren't nearly as deep and human feeling as some of the other characters that I've met. But one thing that Chris Whitting did so well is his environment. He did such a great job of building up this vast fantasy world that feels very classic but has its own, it doesn't feel like a copy and paste of another story, but it does automatically feel like it's an ode to classic fantasy. But it's so interesting because when he writes his characters dialogues or descriptions, he tends to write in a very straightforward way. But then whenever he's describing the world, it's like I can feel that Chris Whitting is in love with his own world. Because when he describes the scenery, when he describes where we are, he moves into not flowery, but into a much more beautiful description where it pulls me right into the story. It pulls me right into the setting. And I loved this setting. I loved this classic yet modern fantasy world that I got to explore with Whitting. I enjoyed every single setting we were in, and we, it's a quest, it's a journey. We went to several different places, and every one I felt like I could touch. I felt like I could reach down and feel the earth beneath me, and I love that feeling as a reader. Next is Kindred, which is time travel, historical fiction, literary fiction, kind of hybrid. But it's a woman who travels back in time, and she can't control her time travel. She can't control how she gets there, or when she goes there, or when she goes back. And I think that she did a great job of describing settings, but really what makes me put this on the list is more about the level of tension that Butler put into this story. I think the setting is, I could see everything. I could picture everything around me. So she does do a good job of describing setting here, but it's the tension and the fear that she wrote into the story that really made me feel like I was there with Dana. Dana is a Black woman who's traveled back to 1815, and she doesn't have free papers. So she has that going for her, which would be, I can't even imagine how terrifying. But then you also have, what if I get bit by a mosquito? What if I eat ham that hasn't been cooked properly? What if I get sick and have to go to a doctor of this time? So there are a lot of different things for Dana to be terrified by. And the way Butler wrote that fear and that tension and that uncomfortableness of where she is, as well as the fear of, how am I supposed to get home? And then when she gets home, how much time do I have before I'm brought back? And what will I be doing when I'm brought back? There's so much discomfort in this story, and so much there. She writes that feeling so well. This one will be a surprise. Stardust. Stardust by Neil Gaiman is a book that I did not enjoy. I didn't like the characters and I didn't like the plot, but I did really like the setting. Gaiman is an author who I think is one of the best writers. I think that his immersion, his ability to write a story that draws me in, no matter how much he describes his world or how much he breezes past certain things, he has this beautiful writing that feels like a fairy tale, that feels whimsical, that feels other than earthly, that I feel like I just sink into and get carried along with. It's like, I'm getting flowery in the way I describe his writing, which his writing I wouldn't describe as flowery. I don't like flowery writing, but it is about as whimsical and light and airy as I can take. It's like that perfect sweet spot of more that I'm comfortable with, but so beautiful that it carries me off with it. And this is a quest book, so we visit several different places and different peoples, and I think the best part of this story was getting to know those different places and those different people. The best part of the story, the thing that I enjoyed the most, was seeing this vast world. The world felt a lot larger than it felt deep. Does that make sense? It felt a lot longer than it felt deep. I wish, like, for me personally, I tend to prefer to be in a place and then to know that place, to sink deep into that place. But Gaiman, I think, as far as this type of story where we're briefly in a lot of different places, I think he wrote it so well. And I really enjoyed being in this world, even if other elements of the story didn't work for me. Daughters of Neri is a YA fantasy, and I liked this book. I didn't love this book, but what I did love was the way she described the setting. So we have two twin daughters who were separated at birth. One grew up in the the palace in royalty, and the other one grew up not in a village, out in the trees. And we're back and forth between their different perspectives. And the way she described the marble underneath one underneath one protagonist's feet, and then the forest beneath another protagonist's feet, and the way she described, she would oftentimes go back and forth between the two girls and help us to feel the difference of where they are and where they grew up. And I really liked the way she paralleled the two, and the way she would describe in this very, very immersive, very descriptive way these two extremely different settings. I thought that she did so well with that, and I really felt like I could feel, taste, hear, and touch everything in this book. Next, I have The Great Alone, and this is a story that takes place in Alaska in 1970 something, I think. And it's about this family who moves to Alaska, and a big portion of this book is about them learning to survive winter in rural Alaska. And I was there. I was in Alaska. I was suffering the cold, hard, dark winter with them. I was spending my whole spring, summer, and fall preparing for winter and being and hoping that we could make it through winter. And then the different tragedies that befall this town and this family because of the reality of the circumstances that they're living in. I was there. I was there with them. And my dad actually read this too, because I got it on audiobook, and he listens to all my audiobooks. And he was like, I'm getting on a plane. I'm going to Alaska. I mean, he didn't, but that's how he felt while he was reading it. He texted me and he was like, I am there. I am in Alaska with them, and I'm about to go get there for real, because it felt so real. And I think that that is one of the things that this author did so unbelievably well, is how well she made me be there too and go through what they went through too. And finally, I'm ending this video too on One Piece, but I'm not going to spend a huge amount of time on it, because I'm basically going to say stuff that I've already said in other videos. But if you don't watch my One Piece videos because you haven't read One Piece yet, let me tell you how great the setting is. So with One Piece, each different saga takes place in a different area where we're exploring different islands, and each island has its own ecosystem. It has its own rules. It has its own political climate. It has its own different quirks and oddities to it, and they're so different. Each one is so unique. At the beginning of reading One Piece, I was saying I love portal fantasy. I love doorway fantasy. I love stepping through a doorway and being in a world that's completely new. And at the beginning of the story, One Piece felt like that to me. It felt like portal fantasy, that each different saga we went to, each different island we visited was a whole new world that I got to explore. And I loved that. I have loved the world building from the beginning. But now I'm deep enough into One Piece that it no longer feels like portal fantasy. I'm definitely not stepping through doorways. This world is connected. And these tiny little details, these little moments that felt insignificant and small and like we were just being weird. It's an absurdist story, so we're just doing something weird now. But no, it's all intentional. It's all planned, and it's all strategically structured to come back around. And sometimes the way these little moments that I think don't matter, sometimes the way they come back around, they hit so hard, because the emotional, listen, I'm not doing a good job. One Piece is such a vast and expansive world that is so intentional, and every detail matters in the world building of the story, but not in an overwhelming, daunting, I have to memorize all this stuff, I need to take notes sort of way, but more like in a way of, okay, I'm going along this journey, oh, it all matters in this really satisfying way that's just orchestrated so well. I really like the world of One Piece. So there you go. Those are some settings that I have loved in the first 6 months of this year. I would love to hear what some of your most immersive settings have been. What are some of the books that you've just become a part of, that you've lived in? Let me know in the comments. Check out my Patreon if you feel like it. We read a lot of books over there. I'm there all the time. I post videos every Tuesday through Friday. I'll see you again soon. Bye.